I am your moderator for this evening. I thank you to Tafe and Chama for the invitation to moderate. I wanted to start out the NAACP. Its mission is to secure political, educational, social, economic equality of rights to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. So when we say Black Lives Matter, it is not to diminish any other life, but it's to say that when you lift up the persons on the lowest rung, you lift up everyone. All lives can't matter until Black lives matter. When Black lives matter, then we prove all lives matter. So again, I thank you for being a part of this panel this evening. And please give a big thank you to Theater Arts for Everyone, which is known as TAFE, and director Diane Cruz, plus cast and crew, along with the Weary Arts Group and director Cal Weary and his cast and crew for the 4 shows, #Matters, Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth, Act Free, and the Water Gun Song, which are the basis for this panel. All of these shows were written by Idris Goodwin and provided to communities to use for free. These short plays were created to spark conversation and serve as a catalyst for action. Each of these short works, written to be read across the multi-generational spectrum, offer different insights about disconnects in racial conversation in the Black experience in America. And again, TAFE and WAG, thanks you. And to the panelists, we thank you for joining us. And I'm going to ask the panelists to open. I'm going to go for each one and ask that you would identify yourself, what organization that you may represent, or what do you do in this genre, and what is your goal and mission? What would you like us to learn this evening? So I'm going to start with ladies first, with Siobhan Coleman.
Hello, everyone. I am currently located in Austin, Texas. I work and I teach at University of Texas at Austin, and I actually transitioned today from a position in the mental health and university health services as a Theater for Dialogue coordinator, where we use theater to have dialogue on campus for the prevention of interpersonal violence. And I transitioned into faculty development. So I'm now the inclusive teaching and learning specialist, and that just happened. And so that is what brought me to Austin. I'm from Detroit. It's hard for me to say I'm from Austin yet. I've only been here a couple years. But today I show up as an independent artist. I'm a performing and teaching artist. And that's who I'm representing today, not UT, but I did want you to know that that is my background and what I do. I also am very involved with TYA, Theater for Young Audiences. I write for them every now and then, and I'm also on their Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force, as well as on their BIPOC Advisory Board.
Thank you very much, Siobhan.
Yes.
And also for each panelist, is it fine if we refer to each other by the first name?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so then we're going to go in alphabetical order to Chad Lassiter. And if you again would introduce yourself, your organization, and your mission.
Yes, thank you. I'm Chad Dion Lassiter. I'm honored and humbled to be in this space, and I always start from that perspective, because it's not promised that you're going to wake up every day. Something larger than myself thought fit to make me, to allow me to see this day, and you know, so I get another opportunity to get it right one more time. I'm the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Just really briefly, the data that I'm pulling is directly off of our website, which is phrc.pa.gov. The Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, or PHRC, enforces state laws that prohibit discrimination. The Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, which covers discrimination in employment, housing, commercial property, education, and public accommodations, as well as the Pennsylvania Fair Educational Opportunities Act, which is specific to post-secondary education, and secondary vocational and trade schools. So in general, PA law prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religious creed, ancestry, age, handicap or disability, and the use of handling or the training of support animals. PHRC, we investigate employment discrimination complaints on behalf of the EEOC as well as HUD. The law also empowers our commission to educate the public in order to prevent discrimination. So we want to be proactive and not reactive, and foster equal opportunity, and to address incidents of bias that may lead to tension between racial, ethnic, and other groups. We also administer legal and investigative staff, and we oversee all 67 counties in the Commonwealth. We have regional offices in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Harrisburg. And you'll learn more about what the PHRC does by going to our website. Just very briefly, for me, what I look to get out of this evening is the intersectionality of how these four plays intersect with what the society is going through and how it's a microcosm of the very moment that we find ourselves. Also, as a student of history and a truth teller on the behalf of Black humanity that comes out of the same tradition that produced Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King, and Ida B. Wells, I look to share my level of expertise, but also to listen and to learn. And when I say listen, listen with my whole spirit to the other two panelists, as well as Sandra Thompson, who, even though she's in the identity of moderator, brings so much more to the context. And so I'm just once again humbled and honored to be in this space this evening.
Thank you, Chad, and we really appreciate you being here. And I am corrected. My default is to say TAFE, but it's actually pronounced Taffy. So, so we do again thank Taffy Theater Arts for Everyone. Now we're going to go to Cal Weary and ask you to also introduce yourself, your organization, and your mission.
Yes, my name is Cal Weary. I'm CEO of the Weary Arts Group. We are a arts organization based in York, Pennsylvania, South Central PA. We serve Lancaster, Harrisburg, and York, and abroad. We do plays and musicals and original pieces that deal with the human condition and any condition. We've been running for about 6 years, but I've been doing this my whole life. And the folks who work with and for me, they are lifelong artists. And we live the arts condition. I have worked for a number of schools, as well as currently I'm still doing that. I am the president of the Parliament Arts Organization here in York, Pennsylvania. I have been the president of the York Youth Symphony Orchestra. I'm currently on the History Center board. And I'm a Rotarian. And York, Pennsylvania is my home. I'm Brooklyn born, but I've lived in York most of my life. So the things that are on the national scene are happening here. They're happening here, and York is most important to me. But I look at the climate of what's happening outside of York, and I can see what's coming next. And I always want to be on the cusp of using the arts to be a panacea to fix the ails of our people. So what I hope to get out of this tonight and hope to give is that we are an arts community that recognizes that we can be part of the cure, and that we know that the arts cure the heart, the soul, and the body. And we hope to continue to do that in our town and abroad.
Thank you, thank you. And that is a huge part of the discussion this evening about how we can use arts to bring equity to the theater, to the community, locally, and in fact, nationally. So we just had in the past week or so, the passing of Chadwick Boseman. So I think that what he brought to the community and to the arts seemed to exemplify many of you, what you just stated from Ms. Coleman and Cal Weary, into the arts, and what you also tried to bring as being a living example of what, how you can uplift the Black community and give hope to the Black community through arts. So would you like to share anything about the the Black Panther or any work that Chadwick Boseman did that increased knowledge about Black America and also gave hope to youth who wanted to venture into arts or to have respect for themselves? Either one, Ms. Coleman, Cal. Did I throw you a
gonna
loop?
jump on? You gonna jump on? I'll jump on. I got to jump on it. You know, we've been blessed with having a number of African American male actors who have personified the true grit of being both male and strong in cinema. But usually it seems like they each have their season. One of the most beautiful stories I heard about Chadwick Boseman is that he was brought into an arts program, a very exclusive one. I think it was Felicia Rashad who actually was going out and getting money for a certain group of students to go and study. And they didn't know who the people were who actually were paying for them. And it turns out that Chadwick Boseman's actual payment came from Denzel Washington. And I think that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing because what it then says to me is, who's next? You know, Chadwick was amazing. To know that he's younger than me in his past and his body of work, look at what they chose him for. He was trained so well to tell our stories. Look at like 42. Oh my goodness, I just forgot that. I lost one. Obviously, Thurgood, Marshall. And then there's another one I'm missing. It was really good. But the point is, the point I'm coming to is that, you know, he was chosen because of his strong nature, and you know, he will certainly be missed. And he created a superhero that we could all be proud of too. So I think there's a lot more that can be said about someone like that. But he recognized his job as an artist was to tell stories that uplifted us, and I can't think of anything I ever saw Chadwick in that made me feel like, why did he do that? So I'm glad that I never had to say that about him.
What's resonating with me is, before we started, Cal mentioned we have a small arts community. And what I love about that statement is, especially among Black folks, everywhere I go, they say we have a small arts community, right? Because it is, right? You're interconnected, right, in this way. And so when I heard the news that he passed, I think I got really upset. Number one, because he just always seemed like a great person as well as an artist, and like how that represents us as artists. And also I think there's some level of like realization of mortality because he was so young, right? And the things that are happening right now with the pandemic. But this idea, right, his monologue at the end of Black Panther that talks about how there's more that connects us than divides us. And my first acting teacher, which I call my brother from another mother at this point, he's been a mentor, he posted a picture of him and Chadwick online, and they went to school together. And I didn't look like and asking questions, right? The story came out of how he basically got booted from the stories because he asked too many questions about like how his role was going to be represented. It's just like, yeah, it's just that interconnectedness, and that resonates with me. And as Cal said, he talked about the folks in his theater group who are lifelong artists, and that from big Black Panther making $1 million movies to like one person away, and I'm doing this very trying to prevent interpersonal violence with theater and not a star at all, right? This interconnectedness of how we weave in our work together and how it impacts the broader community and how important that is.
Wow.
Exactly. I mean, I think that goes from the large movie production groups to the Idris Goodwins of the communities, the local communities, to be able to tell the stories that uplift us. I like the way that Cal said that's the importance of having Black people all involved in the arts, from writing, producing, directing, acting, is that they help bring life to the stories that uplift us. And one of the things you mentioned, Siobhan, is where Chadwick Boseman was terminated from a job because he was saying, can I be more than this portrayal of a thug, on the street? So also, Chad and Shavanya, Cal, why is it important that we have this involvement, Black and brown people have this involvement in telling stories that uplift us? So all three of you jump in on that.
Someone else can go first.
Chad,
I'm
why
sorry.
is it important
What was your?
why is it important for us to tell stories for us, by us, about us,
Yeah.
uplift us?
Well, certainly, I think it's important because we're able to give our tradition, that orator tradition, we're able to give accurate history. When you think about D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation and how racist that was, there was a person during that era, Oscar Micheaux, who came back with The Birth of a Race that didn't show the deeply rooted, stereotypical white supremacist images of, blackface. And so when you ask the question of the importance of us being able to tell our stories, think about how not only was he resilient in the face of his own self-adversity with battling with colon cancer, he proved himself to be resilient, but what he always made mindful to his public audiences was that he was a product of the historical Black College University. So whether it's like James Brown, whether it was 21 Bridges, whether it was Black Panther, whether it was Thurgood Marshall, here's a person whose moral imperative and moral compass was one in which he didn't just take roles just for the sake of taking roles. He took roles that were transformative and meaningful. And so I think it's important for us to tell our stories because for so often, someone else has told our story. And those persons who have told our stories have told it from a deficit model. So when you look at the fact that, he was able to talk about Black Panther, nothing wrong with Harriet Tubman, nothing wrong with the Birth of a Nation with Parker, which was actually a transition from those typical movies like 12 Years a Slave that showed our resistance from a liberation standpoint. I think it's just apropos that our stories have to be told in the public space so that we can put not a spin on it, but we can tell the truth. As truth bearers and as truth tellers, too often our story has been told and we start from this slavery context where John Hope Franklin in his work From Slavery to Freedom talks about how we had the Ghana dynasty, the Mali dynasty, and we had the Songhai dynasty. And so he was here for the time that he was put here. It's often been said, it's not the day that you're born, it's not the day that you die, but it's what you do with your dash. His dash was 43 years. He did his dash, but he leaves us a body of work, and we can't even quantify qualitatively and quantitatively the amount of young Black and brown kids that saw themselves in the Black Panther. Like me growing up poor in North Philadelphia, it was always the Incredible Hulk. And my brother and I was like, so he gets mad and he turns green? Or it was Wonder Woman and they over-sexualized her, or it was, Batman and Robin, or it was Tonto, the Lone Ranger, and Tonto's the Native American indigenous person, and it's the Lone Ranger telling him where to go. Or it was Tarzan, and he's telling the natives where to go. So, reading the marvel of Black Panther and then seeing it come to screen, I mean, it was just like something that will resonate with us forever. So it's important in the same way that Paul Robeson was an actor, an athlete, and an activist in Emperor Jones. Boseman was multiple things. He had multiple identities. And so we mourn him. But like in Black Panther and African tradition, you don't die, you just transition.
Thank you. And one of the points that you made is very well taken of how our stories have been told for us and not accurately. Ophelia Chambers, who's another local artist, she likes to say the quote, "Until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter." So that's why it's important for us to be involved in writing and producing and making these plays. So did you, Siobhan, want to also add to that as to why it's important that we uplift through our own stories and narrative?
Well, and the current culture, right? The current climate lets us know that folks believe what they see on television, right? They believe what they see on stage, right? And that becomes their belief system and their moral compass. Of course, not everybody, but more broadly in the United States of America, we're looking at leadership and we're going through trying times. And when you see what people are posting and you see what people are saying and you see what people are believing, it often doesn't take much except the fact that they saw it on television. So if the only thing that we ever see on television of Black folks or brown folks are negative depictions, not only are white people going to believe that, but also Black and brown children are going to start believing that, right? It gets into your psyche, right? And Chad mentioned it, right? The deficit. We're coming from the deficit thinking. And so if you're starting as early as people start watching television, playing with tablets, watching movies, in the deficit, how do we ever get to neutral? And then we want to get beyond neutral, right? We want to get into the positive. So I actually said the other day, like, for every negative depiction, because we want authenticity and we want realness within theater and within film, but for every negative that there is for Black and brown folks, there needs to be 3 more positive, right? Because we're already starting from a far back deficit of, as you mentioned, blackface, right? How many decades did we go with only blackface, right? How many decades did we go where we were only gangsters and crackheads? How many decades have we done that? And that, yeah, and the fact that I can watch something. I love Christmas movies, and this past year is the first time I saw a Christmas movie with a Black family, and I was so excited by the fact that they had on bonnets when they woke up in the morning, right? And that the bonnets were depicted in a positive way, though, right? Like, this is me taking care of myself and self-care, and this is why this is necessary, not the stereotypical, like, somebody going out with a bonnet or a scarf on their head and blah, 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 right?
So like the ghetto mom going to Walmart with the bonnet on her hair so she can't take care of herself, that type of depiction.
Exactly. And so undoing those stereotypes, right? So we're undoing those stereotypes by adding the authenticity and where these things are coming from and acknowledging them. And so, yeah, I think that's why it's so important, because we know how much it impacts us as human beings.
Action with Black people or people of color. So if you have born, raised, schooled only around white people, and your only perception of Black and brown people comes from television or movies, then those negative depictions impact what you think. So that's why most people, that's all they know. They grab their purse, they walk across the street, or they think you're there to rob or rape them or any, other negativity. Chad mentioned Birth of a Nation, which again, this has been prevalent, that thought of the angry Black male coming to rape white women and being a danger to all of society, that led and it permeated throughout all of American culture. But how do we explain this, the creation of systemic racism? What's your answer?
Well, I think we have the conversation no matter how difficult it may be for those who listen. And I think that we enter into the conversation not as apologists. There's so many people who are just in denial about the birth of America, that the birth certificate of America in theory may have stated equality, justice for all, but in practice, it's a flawed democracy. It's a diseased democracy. And for me, you can go even with a soft approach. Well, what do you mean that is a diseased democracy? There's apathy around the democratic process of voting. The numbers speak to that. But beyond that, I think for me, it's really just talking about what the democracy is. Since its inception, the first 12 presidents of the United States owned slaves. People want to be in denial about that. A lot of our white brothers and sisters want to talk about Black on Black violence, but we never mention white on white violence. We take out those little parts of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech that makes the white moderate, the white liberal, and even also, the Black person that may not be radical and revolutionary in thinking, makes them feel comfortable. And we miss the entire first 2-3 paragraphs of the speech. Or we don't really quote King when he says that the greatest purveyor of violence is my own United States government. Or when King talked about the triple evils of poverty, militarism, and racism. And so I think you would agree with this, Sandra. We're at a pivotal point in our democracy where we got to stop just having these conversations with folk who don't want to hear, because it raises our hypertension. It could give us strokes. All types of maladaptive things can happen psychologically because we're trying to prove to people have written about it. So I think that you have the conversation. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but I think that at some point, whites need to have this conversation more so than us talking to them about, grab Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Mask. And I think that the art is one of the ways to do it. When Nina Simone talks about Mississippi Goddamn, you hear her pain around the angst of the killing of Martin Luther King. The plays that August Wilson has done and the plays that, the other two panelists know about even in their sleep that I'm still learning about. I think it's just very important that, we have conversations with people, we leave the data with them. Either they'll recognize that the problem is not Black people. The problem in the United States of America is white supremacy, white violence, white racism, or conversations that people are uncomfortable with. But it's something that people of color, and specifically African-American people, live with every day. Lastly, we know this. We see Jacob Blake get shot 6 times, and then we see Kyle Rittenhouse, who we're calling a boy. He's a white supremacist. He's a domestic terrorist. He walked by the police officers and nothing happened. And that's why when Sandra Thompson opens up by saying Black Lives Matter, that's why we say it, because whiteness affords him the opportunity to live. Whiteness gave him an opportunity to walk by the police, and the police was like, yo, what's up? How you doing? Hey. But Blackness is always under surveillance and suspicion, and this is not something made up in the psyche of Black people. It's a lived experience every single day. But the arts, it makes me say, like John Legend and Common, glory.
Well, and you can, and to add to that, which was so lovely said so lovely, it's like people call themselves allies and advocates, but then they don't want to have the conversation among each other or with their children, right? And we know data tells us that by 6 months, children can already start telling the difference between people culturally, right? They can tell that your hair is different. They can tell, they already start making those observations. And then by 2 years old, they're able to start creating bias or picking up on other folks' bias. So at that point, if you're not having that conversation, but you're supposed to be an ally or an advocate, you're not even having the conversation or seeing these plays taking your children to see these plays and experiencing this art and representation, practicing and getting representation, then the systemic racism is what's raising them, right? It's what, if you're basically like opening the door and being like, come on, systemic racism, go ahead and teach my child what to think and how to think about people. So yeah, you wait till they're 10, 14, 15, 16 or older, or don't have that conversation at all. I don't see race, or we don't, then you're not an advocate, right? You're not an accomplice. You are complicit.
How do you think #Matter, the play #Matter, adds to that conversation to bring light to that?
Say that one more time. I missed the beginning part of your question.
In this discussion that we're having, how do you think #Matter, the play #Matter, enlightens the community to this conversation?
So I want to start off by saying, we chose to do it 3 times. So obviously it meant something to us. And in those 3 times, we embodied some different age groups, and we even flipped gender on it, because we wanted to embody everybody who has the discussion. I think that for us, especially in York, Pennsylvania, and obviously I've been other places and I have family all over the world, but I think one of the conditions that we have here is that we're in such close proximity with people who we for years always believed thought the same way that we do.
Wow.
And then something happens in front of us, and we both say at the same time, BLM, ALM. At the same time we speak it and look at each other and, oh my gosh, I always assumed that you would follow me on this idea. And now a whole Pandora's box is opened on the people that we thought we knew, both Black and white, that we thought were on the same side with us and had the same viewpoint. The reason why #Matter is so strong as a piece is because it looks at 2 people who could have had a completely different story if they were born at a different time. They were born at a time where we've been boiling in unrest. So now when you're born at that time, depending on which side you're taking, you go from being in a love story to being in a tragedy. So you have two people who could have ended up married, could have had a whole bunch of other issues that come from that, but it never happens because one person has spent their entire life being stifled and not being able to really be free and say who they were. And another person has spent their entire life thinking that they were the advocate for someone like that. And it turns out they're part of the stifling unit. And I think that, there's a lot of other pieces that do it, but what Idris did with this in such a short period of time is like pouring it's like pouring fire on the forest, burning it down so a new one can grow in such a short period of time, in such a little piece. I'm very, very well versed with the piece because obviously I sat and edited at least two of them, and one of my other directors directed another one, and she edited, did a wonderful job on it. But I think what it really addresses is us figuring out who our true allies are, and then realizing that maybe we're not on the same track right now, but there's the possibility that things will happen, some of them maybe dastardly, that will put us on the same line. Because of course I believe that all lives do matter.
Yeah.
But apparently when we say Black Lives Matter, it's not a statement, it's a wish.
Yeah.
It's a wish.
A hope and a dream that's yet fulfilled.
I think the whole thing is that when you say Black Lives Matter, it implies Black lives also matter, but I don't think it rolled off the tongue properly. So, it's just like if I say to someone, Black lives also matter, it's a lot harder for them to fight back at that. When you say Black Lives Matter, they automatically can take it and flip it to, well, don't you think that Hispanic lives matter? Well, yes, you're also Black. And don't you think white lives matter? Of course, we're all from the same family. Trust me, we run this the whole way back. You're going to find out you came from us too. So the point is if I say Black Lives Matter, I'm telling you that your life matters. It's the same way we said with Black History Month, Black history is American history.
That's
and
right.
if you choose not to recognize it, man, you're missing a huge chunk of who you are. I don't care what color you are. And one last thing I want to throw, because it was from something previous, but it connects with this. I played a role many years ago of a man named William Johnson. William Johnson, there's a lot of historians that go back and forth on who he was. I don't know if anybody else here has ever heard of him. But William Johnson was in the employment of Lincoln, President Lincoln. When Lincoln came from Illinois, he brought him with him. He lived in the White House with him. They said he was his valet. He cut his hair. He hung out with him. He supposedly was the only Black person on the train going to Gettysburg, and they think he may have been the first one to hear the Gettysburg Address. I did not hear about this man at all until I was in my 30s.
Wow.
So if you never heard of him, here's the other funny fact. They made this movie, a funny, farcical, like horror movie called Abraham Lincoln. I think it was Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer or something like that.
Yes.
William Johnson was in it. And I'd never heard of him before. And then all of a sudden, all these William Johnson things pop out. The reason I bring it up is that we are at a time right now where we're not rewriting history, we're uncovering it. And as we do that, we're going to do that side by side with people who previously thought they were on our side, but are figuring out that they may not be willing to let go of being the savior.
Wow.
We're going to figure it out.
So yes, one of the things, Cal, that you stated that people get offended to say, well, doesn't my life matter too? When they hear Black Lives
Of course,
Matter.
it already did.
But right, but at the same time, when people are saying, let's save the whales, it's not, doesn't all fish matter?
Right.
Mammals matter? Let's save those that are endangered. That's understood. Save the whales are understood. Let's do a march for breast cancer. That's understood. People don't respond. All cancers matter. They do understand that at this point in time, we're just highlighting this at this point in time. So there can be understanding of why this Black Lives Matter is just being highlighted. Who's in danger? But I want to ask the panelists. As you can also use the place to explain, but what do you say to people who say they don't see color, even the allies?
Mm, 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 mm.
I want people. I want people to see who I am. I think that I've been aware of this for really the past 2 decades. This whole aspect of a colorblind society, or Chad, when I see you, I don't see color. When you see me, if you can't see big, bald-headed, 6'6", black, ugly, that's just for a light moment. I'm not ugly. I'm somewhere between Denzel Washington and Yul Brynner. Uh, but 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 I have a problem. I have a problem with that. On multiple levels. I think that that's the problem oftentimes when Cal said that folk eyes are being awakened to recognizing that they thought they were one way, and this moment now has transitioned them to really look at a form of racial self-introspection, that they in fact may be racist, even though they thought they weren't because they had a couple of black people over their homes, or they have a couple of black friends. I think the biggest challenge is simple. It's similar to the post-racial argument that we're post-racial when we got the first African-American president, and we all know that post-racial is still a mirage. So what I simply say, Sandra, is that when people say, we need a colorblind society, I don't want a colorblind society. I want a society that's not based on the false construct and the social construct of race, hierarchy, patriarch, and things of that nature. And so when we say Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that blacks are more superior than whites. I think that we see racism that emerges when people want to say that the examples that you just shared, people really don't want to have a frank conversation like we're having tonight. I'm not saying the populace is not involved in this conversation, but at the end of the day, fundamental to everything that we're saying is that there is a anti-hatred, anti-black, hatred sentiment that people have. And we're acting as if it doesn't exist. So when I was a professor at Penn and Westchester, I would always say that I like the fact that the students in my courses around race relations, I like the fact that they were racist. And they told you they were racist because you know where you're starting from. I don't want the James Byrd type of white friends that when I go out for a drink, I'm on the back of a truck going down in Jasper, Texas until my torso is torn off. And so I think that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the fact that it makes white folk feel comfortable, not generalizing or stereotyping, to say, I don't see Cal as a black man, or I don't see color when I see you. You do. You do. And it's the pigmentation that actually threatens you.
Devon, I want to bring you into this as well.
Same. I think, it's a privilege to be able to say I don't see color, right? Like, because when every room I walk in, I see color. And in every room I walk in, I'm looking for color, right? So to be able to say I don't see color is a privilege, number one, that needs to be recognized. And look, right, racism, there's 3 types of racism. You got institutionalized or systematic. You have internal, and you have individual. So maybe let's say you are not individually racist, but if you are benefiting from racist structures and systems, let's say at work, and you're doing nothing about them, then you're okay with racism. I hate to tell you, there's some racism mixed up in there, right? So you have to be, if you're not anti-racist, then in some way, shape, or form, you are practicing and living in racism, right? If you're benefiting from it, you're privileged from it, and you're just like, oh no, that's okay. Yeah. So to say you don't see color and color impacts, right? Every job, I would say, I'm not gonna say every job because that's a generalization, but most jobs that I've ever worked at, right, race impacts me in some way, shape, or form. And like acknowledging intersectionality, sometimes I don't know if it happened because I'm a woman, or because I'm black, or if it's because I'm fat, or if it's because I have kinky hair. I can't separate that, right? But at the same time, if you're my coworker and you're noticing that repetitive things are happening, and you're just like, no, I don't see color, Siobhan, or I don't see that these things are different, then you are part of that racist system. So people need to look at themselves from a few different directions and a few different lenses, and also how they navigate the world, right? And acknowledge, like you said, coming to the table and being like, yep, I understand that I participate in these racist systems, and whatever it is, maybe I don't have the power to change it, maybe I'm scared to change, whatever that is. But same, I teach a class about interpersonal violence prevention and how we use theater to do that. And we spend I had a student a couple years ago say, why do we spend so much time on identity? Well, how are you going to go into a room and prevent interpersonal violence, prevent sexual assault, and you don't even know how you're showing up in the space? What identity do you bring to this space, and what privilege do you bring to this space? You can't walk into that space blind and just say, just do this and this will end, or this. You have to know where you're coming from, what your belief system is, and you also have to be able to look at me and have some thought or use some form of knowledge to at least guess maybe what lens I'm bringing to the table in order to facilitate to me or have a conversation to me or help me or support me.
I think that's important points you made, Siobhan, because of the fact, especially when you're in predominantly white communities, as an African-American person, quite often we're walking in rooms where it's obvious we're the only ones there. So we are greatly aware of our presence and the presence of others. And the point is, you know, people can see blonde hair, they can see auburn hair, they can see black hair, meaning you can see color and you can distinguish it. And in America, I remember we used to say we are a melting pot. So I think that was the problem, I'm going to say problem, that people believed everyone needed to blend in. Now I think I like to use the narrative, we are a salad bowl. So different colors, different flavors, different cultures, and you just enjoy it, the mix together, and it's beautiful and all has, you know, different beautiful taste. The other thing that was said by you panelists is the fact that when you enter these areas as the only person, sometimes you may act in fear, you may not have confidence, and that remind me of the play Act Free. When they learned that they were free, learned by overhearing a conversation they were free, but still were afraid to act free. We're still afraid to go out and say, hey, aren't I free? Until the people came and they said the people, I think they kept saying officials, people in authority. So how does that add to this conversation of Black people from history needing people in authority to designate us as free?
So it's interesting. I'm looking at the chat, and Ben Hodge popped up a question there, and I think I can weave some of what you just asked into his question a little bit. He's asking a question about allies. It kind of goes back to something we talked about earlier, and the thought that the 1960s liberal ally actually was believed didn't like slavery. Oh, sorry, actually before that. Didn't like slavery, but still believed in white supremacy. What a weird thing to believe in one and not the other. And the reason why I think I can connect them is this. You have a group of people who believed that they were doing a justice to Black people by having them in slavery. That same idea transcends from slavery to, well, we've got to help these people. They can't take care of themselves. If we don't do this, then they'll never be able to eat. We have to make sure that we're taking care of them in this way. There's all these things that are built in that are constantly allow someone to have that I keep using the word savior. I hate to use it that way because I have one, so it's a little different. But I'm saying that idea that there's a group of people out there who aren't like the others, who are different, that really care about Black issues. They're not Black. They care about Black issues. They care about Black people, and they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that these people, that they can make it. There becomes a piece for us where if you don't know how to make it on your own yet and you haven't figured it out, you're always looking for someone to come along and tell you it's okay to be. Not be Black, not be cool, not be a lawyer, not be a doctor, just to be. And the whole idea with Act Free is they're waiting for someone to tell them what to do next because they've never been able to tell themselves that. They've never been able to tell themselves that. And there always seems to be, and mind you, you have to know, like, this comes from a place of love. I have as many, if not more, white people who are a part of my life. I have a huge black family, but I have a huge extended family of artists who are every color of the rainbow. But there are a lot of white people who are part of my life. So this is not in anger towards any of them. I love them. But they are always in a position of how do I guide you and help you? And normally that would be seen as a great thing, but sometimes it oversteps its boundaries. And especially when it comes to your freedom, that you've actually blocked yourself off so much because you've never known freedom. You've never known it. Realize we live in a place right now where there are children who grew up, there are adults who never knew a world without a black president. We've heard that before, right? They have a completely different viewpoint on what black people can become and be. Those folks aren't necessarily looking for a white savior. They're not looking for anyone to be. They're looking to be their own. And that's not getting into a whole conversation about welfare or any of those other things. It's literally talking about the fact that there are a group of people who are waiting for someone to come along and save them. And it's sad. The piece that Act Free, it talks about that. But there's plenty of us who are free and are still waiting for someone to come along and give us the grant, give us the space. Why didn't they give us this thing? Why didn't we get, I can't say enough about that.
But and I'm glad you brought up grants, and please, Siobhan and Chad, add to this, but I'm glad you brought up grants and also mentioned need to be taken care of. Because don't we see that today? Isn't it, would you agree that we see many Black and brown businesses and opportunities denied grants and financing because those who control the money believe that they aren't capable of adequately controlling their own money? So don't we still see that today?
Yes, I think that's one of the things I loved about Act Free, right? It was kind of meta, right? It was a performance about how do you move on life and do this next performance, right? Like, because I don't know what free is, like you mentioned. I've never been free. My ancestors in the history of America, in America's history, hasn't been free. And now you're telling me to go be it, right? So now what am I going to perform? And of course, we all perform something, right? We all have levels of performance in life, right? But like, so now I have to go off and perform this thing called freedom. What does that look like? How do I do that? I need somebody to come give me directions on how to do that. But then at each step, right, in history, and I'm not a history buff, so I'm Chad. I've heard you say you're a student of history, so excuse me. But, right, but we know that, like, slavery, and then the KKK came because they were like, y'all acting too free. And then we had Jim Crow, right? And we have all these things that got put into place to stop Black folks from being too free, right? Like, don't get out of hand now. Don't be foolish, right? And then we have these things, these systems that come up that, as mentioned earlier, I heard W.E.B. Du Bois, right? We have double consciousness, right? We start to think, well, how do I perform this free thing right? How do I perform this free thing correctly? And even now, like, worrying about the white gaze, right? Like, what do I do when white folks are in the room? What do I do when white folks aren't in the room? And like, when can I be my authentic self and how much, right? This like slider of how authentic I can be today and what level of performance I have to do. So yeah, I think we're still having to act free, right? And like, decide what freedom is, and then also acknowledging that because of the power structure that exists, we can't freely act free, right? We don't have some of those, not all of us don't have, it's different levels, right, of privilege that we have and that we are able to participate in, but definitely because those systems are still around, which is why, of course, it's so frustrating when people say, well, why don't you get over it? Why don't you, which happened in #matters, right? Why don't you live it? But you can't, because at every, I mean, only a few decades go by before there's another systematic thing that holds oppression over our head and continues to oppress Black folks and make sure they're not acting too free.
I would just add that I like what Cal said when he showed you that duality that he has. He comes out of the African tradition, and we all come out of the African tradition as displaced Africans in America, but to always be mindful not to let race seduce us. And you heard him articulate that he has a whole vanguard of extended family that's white. And so I think for me, I'm always reminded of the relationship, not the allyship, but the relationship, how fluid and organic it was during the civil rights movement with whites and Jews, that really brought about some of the changing of the Jim Crow dismantling, not just with Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Yeshua Heschel, but so many others that didn't make the history book. For every time that we highlight Edmund Pettus Bridge and the Good Trouble with John Lewis, and we should, there were a number of whites and a long history of American democracy that were part of the Underground Railroad with William Still and Harriet Tubman that started the historical Black colleges and universities. And I think that at some point there has to be a deprogramming. And I earnestly don't know how you start that deprogramming. I can just share with you, not here for this call, how my family did it, but there's always this sense of white validation, or grandma must say, if you're white, you're right. If you're Black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. That, my grandmother comes from the South. And so that was always a challenge, that, the whole notion in the African-American community that the white man's ice was colder, or whatever the case may be. That's been something historical. But there's also been some other things. When you hear Siobhan talk about kinky hair, my grandmother would tell my brother and I, if she can't take the comb, don't bring her home. And I'm not trying to out my grandmother, but what she was saying is that, the whole aspect of coarse hair, the straightening iron. So, growing up in our community, we didn't look at white girls, we didn't look at Hispanic girls. And then I went away to Johnson C. Smith, a historical Black college in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it wasn't until I went to University of Penn for my master's work that a white young lady started approaching me, and I had a conversation. She was like, how come every time we talk, you don't look me in the eye? And it was because of the historical aspect of what happened to Emmett Till, what my mom and my dad and my grandmother and my community would talk to us about. So we were always socialized for, racially protective factors, right? So when I was a professor at Penn, I would get on an elevator and a white person would get on the elevator and they would say, hey, do you play basketball? And I would say, no, I'm into equestrian. Well, one particular time, a white woman and her husband got on the elevator and they said, excuse me, do you play basketball? I said, no, I'm into equestrian. They said, what kind of horses? And I said, Arabian. They said, what kind of breed? I said, hell, I play basketball. It just, those racial protective factors, it was just too much. It was too much. But I like what Cal said, because for the viewers who are viewing this, as as an African American, I don't get seduced into the Black-white binary in the way that the media tries to seduce us. There was enough people out there who were white. I'm not talking about the ancient provocateurs and the white supremacist interlopers, but the individuals who had signs up that said, Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace, no racist police. And it goes back to a lot of what Cal and Siobhan is saying, in the sense that this is a new generation that have come of age with President Obama, and they're going home and they're like, if you're a white young lady, you're like, no, Dad, don't call my Black boyfriend the N-word. Or, look who's coming home to dinner, imitation of life. This is a different generation that's moving beyond those stereotypical things that they were socialized, and that's on both sides of the color line for our viewing audience. It's not, there are some things that happen in the African-American community, but to your point, Sandra, this whole aspect of validation, I think we don't need it. We saw that with Barack Obama, white validation. A lot of Blacks didn't come on board until whites started validating him. They were like, who is this guy? And then, we underscored the fact that he receives legitimacy because of Reverend Jeremiah Wright on the south side of Chicago. We think that it was the white elites, but it was Jeremiah Wright that actually, when folk were calling, who's this community organizer with the funny name with these big ears? Who is him? It was Reverend Jeremiah Wright that was like, oh, That's one of my church members, community activists, came out of Harvard, came out of Columbia University. And the last thing I'll say is, when we walk into rooms, it's noticeable and it's frightening at times. And I'm personalizing it when I'm the only person in the room. So I have, 2 degrees from the University of Penn, and you would have people that would say, well, they would outright say to you, did you get here because of affirmative action? And I would simply say, no, but let's end that argument and say I did. You don't get out of an Ivy League university because of affirmative action. But we never talk about legacy omissions when a person like George Bush went to Hanover, which was the feeder school for Yale University, and graduate with a GPA lower than 3.0. We're learning from the Donald Trump family that he got someone to take his admissions test to get into the University of Penn. And so that dichotomy on every side of the color line is what I find problematic. But at some point, to Siobhan's point, we have to break the psychological chains of slavery. Not my terminology, Naeem Akbar's book, Breaking the Psychological Chains of Slavery, so that we can get free in our spirits, in our souls, that we don't need white validation. I tell my nieces when they articulate, I can do bad by myself. No. You can do good by yourself. You don't have to say you can do bad by yourself. And so that's the only thing I wanted to add. I just felt touched by what Clay said as it relates to an extended family, because at the end of the day, we're all human.
So there's a question in reference to basically, how do we help the predominantly white community see other perspectives when we know that increased exposure helps increase compassion and openness? And I also want to bring in the conversation in reference to the play Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth, because the young lady who, I guess it seemed like it was Halloween, but yet she was also trying to write a rap or a poem about Juneteenth. And she said something I thought was important to it, that everybody knows about rap, but not a lot of people know about Juneteenth. So she wanted to incorporate the two, what people knew about and what people didn't know about. So how do you use that to answer Alex's question of how do we use what the white community knows about to educate them on what they don't know about, like Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth?
I think what Cal and Chad were just talking about, right, in that community building, like folks who are actually within your community, right, or in your village, as opposed to kind of going back to that performance, right? Like you can perform allyship. You can't perform a real relationship. You can't perform being part of a community, right? And so in places like education, for example, since I work in education, oftentimes people don't value the time or the effort it takes for community building, right? The time to get to know that these folks are celebrating Juneteenth, right? Which is why you can be in that same neighborhood, like in #Matter, and be living 2 different lives, right? But you went to the same school and you live around the block from each other, right? Because community building, as important as it is often not valued, is often not given time. And so we're missing that authenticity, right? And people are starting to say, I want accomplices and not allies, right? And in order to be an accomplice, I feel like you got to really know somebody, right? You got to have, you're not going to ask somebody to be your accomplice that you don't trust and don't have some level of understanding and communication and things of this nature. So I think that's one place to start, right? It's like actual community building. What are you doing? If your organization, which I see too often in theater, your organization is servicing young folks who are Black and brown, they're coming for field trips. They're the reason you got the grant to go into the schools, but then nobody on the board reflects that community, right? You've never met these kids' parents. You're not inviting them to come talk about what the season's gonna look like, or you're not gonna do any of these things. That you're skipping over community building, and you're skipping over those authentic relationships, and that's part of it.
So that's beautiful. I just made a comment to one of the boards I sit on. Probably got myself in trouble like I usually do. I made a comment about they were talking about how do we connect with the Black and brown community and make them more a part of what we're doing. And the first thing that I said was, first off, take a look at our board. If you wonder why we don't have more people speaking up from the Black and brown community, if it's just me and this one guy here, and it's always us who are speaking up for what makes sense. We don't even speak for the entire Black community. We speak for our section of it. We speak for everybody. You know what I mean? But there's things we don't even know that are needed. And so I said, we need to start mimicking more what we want to be in our board. Our board needs to look at that. You said something else too, and it got me. Oh, it got me, and now I forgot it because of the other piece. But I definitely do think that you cannot have a community that of white folks who are saying we want to be better. We want this to be better. You can't have them always being in a servitude situation. I think what you never see is, or maybe it's because we served for so long, but sometimes it seems almost like we need to have a Black outreach, not only for ourselves, but literally welcoming others in. We're doing this, you're not excluded. We're having Juneteenth, you're not excluded. Now I just remember what I was going to say. So I got a question for our panel. All right. When you think of Pennsylvania, what city do you think of as being pivotal when it comes to the Civil War? Most pivotal city, I'd say one of the most pivotal cities when it comes to the Civil War in Pennsylvania.
I told you I'm not good at history.
I'll tell you what. There's a movie.
I would say York or Gettysburg.
Thank you, my dear. Gettysburg.
That would have been the.
Now, us in York, we know it's York, but Gettysburg, my goodness, yes. Gettysburg Address was there. Intense battles were fought there. It is a tourist. I won't say tourist trap. It is a tourist attraction. All right.
Harriet Tubman statue there.
Yes. So here's what I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen. Of the jury. I'm just messing with you, Sandra. If Gettysburg is a place that the entire world comes to see people dressed the way they wore clothes back then, it's constant throughout. There's special times, 4th of July, other things when people come there in abundance. But I can tell you, I'm working right now with a group of people. There is no major Juneteenth celebration in Gettysburg. And in fact, I was a part of our Juneteenth celebration in York was 10 times larger than what they had in Gettysburg this year. They had two events in Gettysburg that both were good, but they definitely pale in comparison for a place that literally is one of the first places you think of when you think about the civil rights. The Civil War. Now we think about Philadelphia, we think about York, Pennsylvania when we think about Revolutionary War, but for the Civil War, Gettysburg for Pennsylvania is one you think of, and the fact that there's never been any major Juneteenth, like, I'm telling you, next year is going to be something. There's going to be something. There's going to be some Pan-Africanism there like nobody's seen before. You're going to see people in petticoats with kente cloth. We're going to break down some walls, but and we have some really good allies on I won't even say both sides of the race barrier. There's no race barrier when it comes to us, and well, there is. But we try to mash it down when it comes to the arts as much as we can. We know that it's there too. But I just think it's interesting that in a place like Gettysburg, all that rich history, at the end of many wars, you have a resolution, but the resolution isn't necessarily the stuff that belongs in Bibles. So, and I'm not necessarily talking about Christian Bible, I'm saying a Bible. That what happened at Gettysburg, what happened during the Civil War, it's the stuff of Bibles. It's biblical. It's people being freed. It's people's hearts and minds, being freed. And I think that the fact that place doesn't have a grand Juneteenth celebration is one of the reasons why the people I'm working with are going to make that happen. But that's another way since it has so many tourists of every color, but lots of white folks, they're going to find out about Juneteenth next year. Like, what is this?
Not to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
But I think that sounds like a really good idea, is to incorporate a Juneteenth celebration in there with Gettysburg reenacting the Civil War, and then going to this is what happened in hundred years later or so. But I also want to bring Chad into this conversation, and we have a few minutes left, maybe 10, 15 minutes left. If there's any outstanding
Goodness.
questions,
Time
please
flew.
put it in the chat. But Chad, how can we educate the white community to more diverse ideas? Because we know that an exposure to diversity helps people to become more compassionate and understanding and empathetic. So how can we match up what they may know and what they don't know and bring those together to educate them?
So I think it's a great question, and I'm going to answer the question. But for me, I always start with myself. So growing up in the African American community, a product of the Black church, the product of a historical Black college, I was really shaped around ethnocentrism. So I thought that the only suffering that occurred was my own suffering with the African Holocaust. And then I learned about the Native American Indigenous Holocaust. I learned about the Jewish Holocaust. I like what Siobhan said when she said the way she looks, right? I just want to, it touches me because when I first came to the state 28 months ago, I had diamond earrings and I had a gold tee. And people were just like, that's the new executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission? So that validation that Cal talks about that we're seeking through, in the intersectionality of these plays, I took the diamond earrings out, I cut off the facial hair, but nobody questions how Lieutenant Governor Featherman looks. If you looked at him, he's very imposing, tattoos, everything. So I start with the self. How can I learn more about myself? How can I learn more about others? Don't have to have a person in my family who's a female to come down with breast cancer for me to be sympathetic around breast cancer. I think with our white colleagues, one of the things I would say is don't be so quick to want to get a book, right? So, and I'm not talking about the brother in the chat who mentioned Begin Again by James Baldwin. I start with the greats. I stay with James Baldwin before I go to anybody else. I stay with Martin Luther King, Ida B. Wells. I stay with all of them before I venture out to see what someone else says. But then we go and we say, oh, Robin DiAngelo, white fragility, or I know York is getting ready to bring Jane Elliott in. Oh, Jane Elliott. But Black folk been saying this forever. We don't have the #1 bestseller. So you need to listen to what we've been saying, whether that's been Yvonne Sertima, if that's been John Henry Clark, if that's been Bell Hooks and Killing Rage. Listen to what we say, not even the books. Listen to what the local branch of the NAACP has said in York. Listen to what that Black and brown parent has been saying about police brutality in York throughout Pennsylvania. So I think for our white colleagues, a lot of them, not generalizing or stereotyping, they like that posh pouche, kumbaya, tiptoe through the tulips. Oh, I'm reading on how to be an anti-racist. Grandmama on my daddy's side, Grandmom Lassiter, she would just simply say, be fundamentally a good person. Just be a good person. Treat people the way you want to be treated and treat people the way you were not treated. But if we have to do something, what I would ask them to do is to come in and learn what it means to fight for social justice on the behalf of Black humanity. I would also teach them what white supremacy is. I think that there are some books that they need to read, but I think they have to go through a series of workshops visually. Start them with D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. Hit them up with 13th. Then give them Emmett Till's a story. They need to see Strange Fruit that talks about what happened to Mike Brown. I think that they have to read the data that exists that really speaks to the heart of white supremacy and white violence. That is the problem. So I would say that as a combination of that, they need to join organizations, but not come in and try to take over. So if you join the NAACP, like the psalmist says, be still and know, and listen to the experiences. Don't placate us. Don't say that you know what we're going through, because you don't. But then I think on the other end, what we have to do is embrace the fact that some people struggle, and there's some people within our culture that struggle too. I know a lot of white folks who are more woke than some black people in my family. And so that's not outing them or anything like that or critiquing them. But I think everything that we have to do is to have to be frank conversations and not be afraid. I've never seen anybody get so upset that they've taken a MacBook or they've taken a cell phone and they've hit someone with it. And I think what has to happen for a lot of our white colleagues, we're mad, but we might not necessarily be mad at you. And we're not going to take our anger and rage and 401 years of oppression, of systematic and structural racism out on you. But just be mindful that you can't come into that space thinking that if Sandra says something or Siobhan says something or Cal says something or I say something, that here we are, we're the angry black person. No, we're passionate. That's our cultural style. We talk with our hands. It doesn't mean I'm about to hit you. It just means I'm animated. Sometimes black folk talk like this. Sometimes white folk talk like this. Sometimes we're animated. And so that's the last thing I'll say, Sandra, and thank you for giving me this time real quick, is that's what Eric Garner was saying. He wasn't being aggressive towards the police. He was like, I wasn't selling Lucy's. Stop harassing me. He was having a mental unraveling of being oppressed and being under surveillance and suspicion. And so all that, people say, well, if he wasn't flinging his hands, no, he still would have died. It doesn't matter what we do. There is an anti-hatred for black people in American democracy. And so people have to recognize that. But like Maya Angelou, even in the midst of all this, still we rise.
Thank you, Chad. That was very powerful and very true. I also want to throw in the old school Roots. When I was growing up, we were made to sit and watch Roots. And I tell you, to me, that taught you a lot about white and black interaction and dynamics. I want to, in our few moments that we have left, I do want to also talk some about the last play that we didn't discuss, is the Water Gun Song. So Siobhan and Cal, can you talk to us about the Water Gun Song and this conversation of race and racism as to the conversation?
You'll go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Because it's rather short, but I just want to say it was this beautiful moment. Number one, it was beautiful in general, right? The fact that we have to have this conversation with our young people, so young, speaks to me and resonates, right? But there was this beautiful moment where the father, the wonderful actor playing the father, said something along the lines of, remember when we brought snacks for everybody and we had to make sure that everybody could eat the snacks, or it sounded better than the way I'm putting it. But I had this moment, right, of this, what Chad is talking about, right? These 401 years of anger kind of did something to me when he said that, because I said, you know, people can ban peanuts at a school in a moment because they don't want a chance having that one peanut by that one child, right? Pink signs everywhere, right? I worked in a lot of schools too, Detroit public schools, Romulus public schools, all these public schools, and then signs everywhere. Don't bring peanuts, because they don't want to chance it. But the fact that I don't want to chance what happened to Aiyana Stanley Jones, who police no-knock went in and shot up her house and they weren't even at the right house, right? The fact that I don't want to chance what happened to Trayvon Martin, that Tamir Rice, right? The fact that I don't want that to happen anymore. The fact that I don't want that to be a chance. People can't fathom that or understand that, right? They don't understand why we have to go through so much to stop that. But we can understand why we have to not. Like, I've been in some schools where they are serious. They're ready to fight you about those peanuts, right? And so it was this really beautiful and also angering moment for me of like, what does it take, right? What does it take to get people on board so that we don't have to keep having this conversation with our young people about water guns and some adults thinking that a water gun is a gun. And I even had some like bitterness around like, but do they really think it's a real gun, or do they know it's a water gun and not care, right? And so this idea of, I don't know, it's just swirling in my brain, these ideas of like constant micro and macro aggressions on a daily basis. Constantly people talking about like being empathetic and being empath and SEL learning, right? Social, emotional learning, and all these things that, number one, are already embedded in theater and arts, and people are taking them away. But like these conversations people so easily have that are easily applicable to anti-racist work and what we're trying to do, right? But for some reason, people don't get that. For some reason, people don't buy into that. They're not ready to buy that ticket. And so that play, that entire piece, I think, is a piece that was so well done because it was a whole lot within that piece. The fact around this conversation, the fact that folks don't want to change, right? They're not doing anything to change the fact that this is happening to young people and adults. And so, yeah, I just think that resonated with me, and that sticks with me, that play.
So, thank you. I think the actor that you're speaking about will love when I tell him that you said he was wonderful. So I will point out the fact that in the scenario of who we are as Black people, that we are the peanuts. We are the ones that from the very beginning of us integrating with schools, they were trying to keep these peanuts from being next to their kids because they didn't want the allergic reaction of them becoming impregnated by us or impregnating us or getting our diseases or all the things that they made up in their mind that we were going to do, stealing from them, killing them. We were the peanuts that would cause their allergic reaction. I will say that of all the pieces that I edited and worked on for this, that one took me the longest. It's why it went up later than the rest of them, and it mostly it was a bear to fight with because it was tough for me. I have kids. I kept chopping it and chopping it and chopping it and chopping it. We had to work in 2 remote places, but I'm telling you, the labor of love that came out of it and what you actually get from that piece. I love Idris for that. I want to talk to him directly about it because as a Black father with a Black son, every couple years I have to have a different conversation. So when they're real little, you have the conversation maybe it's about a water gun or about when you know running down certain streets, you better walk, don't run. You know the stories and the things that I was told when I was younger are different than what I've said to my son, but still have some of the same pieces. We are the peanuts. We are the allergic reaction causer. We are the catalyst to their lives. So doing that piece with that young man. What really got me was there's right at the end of it, and this lays into all of us. There's a point where the whole way through it, we're experiencing difficulties. Things are flickering in and out, and then at the end, the son says, "You know what else?" And he fades away, and the father's left alone to ponder what else. And that's where we are as a community, a global community. What else? We've been through so much to feel almost as if our skin has cursed us. What else? What next? What else? What next? So I think that, what that piece does tell us is we need to protect ourselves. We need to make sure we protect our little ones and talk to them about, I will be on a call tomorrow like this with little ones all through my family. We're having our family reunion online all weekend. And we have little ones, and we're going to be talking to them. And I've done it with other kids all over the country, just talking to them about what protest is and what's going on out there and how we talk to each other and what we need to look for and just protecting one another. But most of all, not doing the things that get us dead. Because we still live in a place like that where that can happen.
Sadly true. So Cal, I do want to give you another 30 seconds. I'm going to give all the panelists about 30 seconds to state your last thoughts of what can we do to make this better. And you had already started, but I wanted to get us to the 30-second mark. So I want you to be able to finish your thoughts. What are your parting thoughts of what we can do and how all the communities that are on this call could be empowered and help empower others?
So I think, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible, 30 seconds. We have to do what we haven't done before. And that might sound dumb, but anyone who's lost weight before, anyone who's learned how to do something they never did, you always end up having to do something you never did before. Maybe it's cutting out sugar. Maybe it's getting on a treadmill. And so all I'm going to say is to all the folks who are part of our lives who we want to help them. Some folks we're never going to be able to change. Let them go. Let's work on the ones that are teetering. Let's get ourselves out there and let's be that beacon of light. I'm not saying kowtow or bend over to something else. I'm saying be who you are and do something different than you've done before. Put yourself out there. Go be in a play. Go help someone, play drums on the street corner. Maybe it's helping someone to write that grant. Help them get to where you want them to go.
Thank you, thank you. And we're gonna go to Chad Lassiter, 30 seconds, last words.
I would just encourage us to look at the impact that the arts have in healing divisions. And so I'll just end with that. I think that more funding for arts in our communities and arts in our schools can tell a visual story and can help the next generation and also unborn generations heal from the sting of white supremacy.
Thank you. Siobhan Coleman, your 30-second closing.
Definitely keep having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Stop shying away from conversations. One of the reasons I love TYA, is Theater for Young Artists, is because young people want to have these conversations, and this is when they should be having these conversations. And like Cal said, you can't change everybody, but if we're starting early and we're starting to have these conversations with young folks, that's beneficial, but also community building. Like, have these conversations, build community. Don't show up to perform also, do the performance stuff also, but also think about what action steps you can take and what is actually actionable, right? Don't create diversity and equity statements that you can't follow through on, right? Think about what things you can do, the 15% that you can do in your organization, in your community, and go on from there.
Thank you, thank you. So again, we thank our panelists, we thank Taffy, we thank WAG, we thank all of you who are on this Zoom call to learn more about diversity and how you can be advocates, not just allies. Get involved and help support Taffy, help support WAG, get involved with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, as well as York NAACP is multicultural. So, and I think one of the biggest things is listen to the voices that are around you and help lift up those voices as well. So for the panelists, we're going to ask you to stay on the call. We have some parting words, so please stay on the call. And for all the attendees, again, have a great evening.